Hi there. My name is Madison, and I'm the marketing executive here at the Business Software Center. Today's coffee talk is about getting the most out of your IT budget by looking at shadow IT and some other IT software areas. If you ever need to get in contact with me, please use the hashtag CoffeeTalkTBSC on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube, or you can email me info@businesssoftwarecenter.com. So before I begin with talking about IT and your budget, I think it's important to note the total cost of ownership, or the TCO. So basically, the total cost of ownership means the total cost of the lifespan of your software that you're using. So that includes things like the purchase price, the original purchase price for your software, the maintenancing costs or the operating costs for that particular software, the lifespan throughout, and as well as if it's on cloud or on premise, you might even have to include different kinds of storage facilities for that as well. And then you have to know exactly what you purchased, obviously, to review the total cost of what you put your money towards with this software. So sometimes we find that businesses do not know what they're paying for, and this could be a variety of reasons. Either they're not tracking it, they're not familiar with it, or it could be with shadow IT. And so with shadow IT, that's basically the shadow software in the background being used, and it's not being tracked or monitored. This is specifically because it's software that is being used without the IT department's approval. So because the IT department doesn't really have a familiarity with what's going on, it's just operating in the background and it's not being tracked or monitored. And of course, shadow IT operates on premise or in the cloud, which can make it a little bit more complicated. If, say, for instance, your IT department has switched fully to the cloud, maybe they're not paying attention to things on their desktops in the office setting. So there are plenty of risks when it comes to not tracking or monitoring your software in general, which I'll review later. But for right now, I'm just going to focus on the risks of not knowing your shadow IT. So with the risks, there is security. The security issues are data leaks, compliance issues, and privacy issues. So for instance, if you have an employee using an unauthorized application, unauthorized software through the IT department, the data of the company can get into the wrong hands. Sometimes third-party apps being downloaded on the phone might not be trustworthy. It's best to run this by your IT department before installing these applications on company-owned devices. But sometimes this doesn't happen. And of course, compliance can become an issue if you're over-installed on devices or just operating on devices you shouldn't necessarily be operating on. Another risk of shadow IT is increasing your IT spending. And by doing that, you're risking your IT budget in the process. And so sometimes with shadow IT, it's not malicious. People use it because it's meant to enhance their work productivity. So what happens is maybe they started paying for an application or software, and maybe they only used it for like a month or two, and then they kind of just forgot about it. Or maybe they left the company and the IT department forgot that it's up and running. This is what we deem shadow IT, and this is where increased spend happens where it shouldn't be happening. And another risk is being in compliance, which is part of the security, but I think that compliance itself should have its own little area, just because being compliance, it's a combination of security and IT spend, because if you are not compliant, then you might have to pay additional fees with fines, and etc. So I just wanted to talk about some examples of shadow IT, and these are all ordinary software that we use every day, but it's just a matter of what your company policies are, what is your IT spend, what is your company goal. So if you're paying for Microsoft Office, for instance, but you're also paying for Zoom, There really is no reason to have both. Maybe there's a preference as far as doing virtual meetings, but in general, there's no point in paying for a video conferencing feature like Zoom if it's already included in your Microsoft 365 subscription with Teams. So that's just an example. But other examples even include hardware, like I mentioned earlier. You might have shadow IT with different kinds of laptops, tablets, or smartphones that are kind of like the Wild West. They're not being tracked or monitored, and this could, risk the IT budget and the security in the process. But I also have this icon here with different examples like email accounts or file storage solutions. So what's interesting is also with Microsoft, you might have SharePoint, which is included with that, or you can do live editing with Microsoft Teams. So there really is no point in paying for a Google Docs subscription. Or your company might have had Google Docs before switching over to Microsoft, and during the transition, you could have forgot about having this. And so that's why it's important to kind of track and monitor track and monitor your applications and software. So I do have a solution, and that is procurement and cost management. So, an IT department is a really busy place, and sometimes it's just so much work to manually track and monitor these things. So you can always outsource this to maybe your procurement department, your finance department, or you can always get an automated SaaS tracking tool as well. So the solution rests with procurement and cost management by organizing your business purchases. With procurement, you can organize and see exactly where you go, but at the same time, you can analyze your business needs and see where you're at now. Take a snapshot of where you're at now, take an idea, the goal of where you want to be, and try to map out, okay, cost-wise, what can we spend? Application-wise, software-wise, what do we need? And then at the same time, this helps with compliance. Maybe with the procurement, they can look at the contracts that you signed whenever you got the software allocated to you. Or they could also look at the invoice payments and manage the spend that way. But I would also say that discovery is another very important feature, and maybe sometimes the procurement department can't do this, or the IT department can't do this, because sometimes it seems like a really big beast, especially if you have a combination of on-premise, on-cloud, especially if your employees are doing a lot of remote work, they're working from home, so how can you really track them if they're not in the office to see what's installed, what's not installed, etc. So my advice is obviously doing a discovery. It's basically taking an inventory of what you currently have. And so it helps you figure out what's being used, what's not being used. It can help you shed light on what shadow IT is being used. And it helps decide what to do with that data. So with the discovery, we also have, once you discover your information and figure everything out, you have to decide what you're going to do with the data. Then we have the option of reharvesting. So reharvesting basically means subscriptions that are not being used can be reallocated to other people. So if somebody left your company and you're still paying for their software and you're paying for it, it's not being used, why not reallocate it to a new member of the company joining rather than just buying a whole new license? This process will aid in cost control and security by ensuring people leave the organization no longer have access to IT systems and data they once have before. Another piece of advice I have is the optimization through your IT department, procurement department, etc. And so with optimization, that's basically the subscriptions in this analysis are based on active users who are not using the facilities. So it's wasting the value of their subscription. And so this is where your cost control comes in, which is general software. This will take an analysis on what you're currently paying for, what's being used, and you ask yourself the key questions. Why is this not being used and we're paying for it? Is it because our employees aren't trained correctly on it? So rather than just getting rid of the license or the subscription, what you can do is train your employees or simply just notify them, hey, you have this available to you, and then watch the usage increase. So you're actually paying what you're using. Then we have the surplus, and typically this is just licenses that have been purchased, but they aren't deployed yet. So maybe you purchased 15 Microsoft licenses and you haven't allocated them to anybody yet, and you've been paying for them month to month and they're not assigned. Basically, what you can do with taking the discovery and figuring out the surplus is deciding, okay, do we want to deploy them? Do we have the people to give these licenses to, or can we just get rid of the licenses in the meantime and purchase them at a later date when we get 15 new employees? So if you are pretty much bottlenecked with your IT department, if you're having a really hard time figuring out where to start, how to track and monitor, and you know what, this is a huge manual labor and it's often very full of uh, little accidents because you might not track and monitor appropriately. Our advice is to start automating your software asset management. Automation is the key to scaling your business, to making sure you are following your IT budget, etc. And another thing is you can always just get a managed service provider. So we can do all this with our product, Smarter SaaS. So with our Smarter SaaS technology, we provide the automation for you, the IT optimization, and it's a software asset management tracking tool. And what's really nice about this is it gives you a complete dashboard, a complete overview, visual overview of where you're at. You can export all this via Excel to view the data on your own. And then you have meetings with us regularly where we help identify what's going on and what you can do in order to improve your current situation. And right now we are offering a health check. It's called an efficiency health check with our Smarter SaaS tool. And basically what you see here is the efficiency score. And a lot of our customers are in the red. And our goal is to get you at least to 95% efficiency or in the green, which means you know exactly what's being installed, you know what's used, what's not being used, and you're using what you're paying for, you're in compliance, etc. You're just pretty much on point as much as you can be with your software asset management. So this free health check is available on our website, businesssoftwarecenter.com, or you can find it on Microsoft AppSource or Marketplace. It's free for 30 days if you're interested, and it only takes 10 minutes to set up. So please do get in contact with me if you need help getting your IT budget in control. Please feel free to email me info@businesssoftwarecenter.com or find me using the hashtag CoffeeTalkTBSC on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube. I want to thank you again for joining me on today's call. This will be posted on YouTube later today. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon.